in Laos. And what makes you think we never had fossils of dinosaurs in Singapore? Singapore didn't exist when dinosaurs roamed the earth. It was one solid mess. It was Goanna land. And we were part of the part called Laurentia. Singapore didn't exist, but the dinosaurs roamed all the way through Asia to Mongolia, to China, to Mongolia. And therefore, what makes you think they didn't stop over here or walk over what was pre-Singapore? But why is it that there are no fossils remaining in this part of the world, in Southeast Asia, except for Thailand and Laos? It's because our soil is very humid, high temperature, wet. Most fossils will dissolve over 150 million years. That's the reason. But the dinosaurs were the most successful of all the species on Earth. They lived for more than 250 million years. How old is human beings? We cannot even measure 1 million. So what are you? Isn't there something we can learn? Can we learn something from the dinosaur? Why did they survive so long? And what wiped them out? Was it climate change? Was it a meteorite from space? Was it natural earthquake? But what caused all these things? Some more lessons that we as a human species, if they were so successful and could be wiped out, what makes us think and be arrogant that we will survive forever?
And why do you see that there's a need to have such a museum here in Southeast Asia, especially in Singapore? What was the inspiration that drive you that it must be done?
First, it was a heritage. I grew up, the museum was there. Those were the pictures of where the Stienberg Road Museum, the shelving, I remember them as a young child. And the big whale that hung over the rotunda. We grew up with experiences. I think I wanted to become a scientist partly because of that inspiration. When you're a young, this high, and you're looking at a 30-foot whale or 30-meter whale, it's quite awe-inspiring. But when you're grown up, oh, what a scrawny little skeleton it is. And a lot of scientists, Nobel Prize winners included, tell me, as I mentioned the other day, that when they went to London Natural History Museum as a young kid, when they saw the dinosaur there, the same that my reaction to the whale, that inspired them to think about careers. 1. 2, just to be inspired that nature, we are quite small compared to other things. We are, in other words, we are not alone. And we fit into a pattern. We cannot destroy everything that is inferior to us, seemingly inferior to us, because by killing them, we'll be killing ourselves. We break our food chain, and therefore we die. And this is the message really of this museum. The most important crux of this message is, it's not about dead, fossilized, preserved specimens. Because first of all, this is a research museum as well. We just didn't have we had a public outreach museum. We closed it down in 1970, and now we are restoring it 40 years later.
Wow, 40 years later. Wow, that's a long time.
That's a long time. So all these animals were in hibernation.
But how does the government feel about it, and as well as the public? Is it worth the while?
Yes, we went out to test the public. The government says we'll give you moral support, which was fine. But go find your own money, which we did. Why? If it had been just my dream of the director of this museum's dream to build this museum, it would have been two people's nostalgia to resurrect an old colonial relic, so to speak. But on the contrary, this has been a living research museum. We continue to go on expeditions to build up. In other words, it's not a static collection. Secondly, we study the live animals, their biology, their behavior, in order to understand where they fit into the scheme of things. And thirdly, by putting the facts together, displaying them in nice exhibits we are able to educate the future generation about why we have to try to keep our biodiversity going. Because without biodiversity, all our ecosystem services that support our rivers, that support the growth of the forest in order to produce the timber we need, the resources we need, the air we need, the water we need, we are going to perish as a result of them, of the deforestation, of the contamination, and so forth. So ecosystem services can only, which provide our livelihood, can only survive well if the animals and plants are in dynamic equilibrium. There's never a static equilibrium.
Wow. So how many dinosaurs are you going to bring in?
Just 3.
Oh, wow.
We are not going to be a dinosaur museum. The impression is that.
Yeah, so some people thought that.
Yes, it's a wow factor. We know that dinosaurs, because of their size, or the visitors, and that makes you think about, hey, what's my place? I know I'm the brainiest guy at the end of the food chain, but these guys survive very well. How did they get to such a size? And engineers want to study these dinosaurs. How did they support such massive weight? Could they ever get off the ground? How could hollow bones, relatively hollow bones, be so strong and sturdy to support the muscles that enable the animal to amble hundreds of miles? The neurophysiologist wants to understand, how did they breathe? Because some of them have nostrils right on the top of the head. Were they like whales on land? And then somebody else was cute. He says, what happens if this animal, this one, Diplodocus, has such a long tail? If a mouse were to bite the end of the tail, how long would it take for the animal to recognize that he was bitten in the tail at the head end before he could respond? And these are, of course, sometimes jokes, but very real questions that children ask. And this is where they learn about themselves, about science, about the world. This is the importance of museums. Museums are no longer places where you go to gawk at,
Static exhibitions.
static or outlandish creatures, grotesque, whatever. But rather, why did they take different shapes and form? Why is it they had to run on 4 legs? Why are we on 2? These are things. What was the advantage to them to have 2 teeth right in the front? And how come the turtle doesn't have a shell? What was the advantage to this animal to have this? And these are the questions that we can pose to our undergraduates. We can teach them serious biology. They can become researchers later on. But to the general public, here's part of your general education about the world at large, which you have a responsibility to help to retain as best you can, so that future generations can continue to enjoy what you have seen and enjoyed. This is the message.
And how much space in this new building that you're going to be
For
constructing?
the public?
Yes, that will be constructed.
It'll be a total of about almost 8,000 square meters. But we have to store our specimens and so forth. But the public space will be about 2002 to 2005, which is more than 11 times the present size.
Wow,
So
that's amazing.
it's something. We cut our shirt according to our cloth. You ask me, do you believe in that? What kind of support? I always believe that when I raise money, I can go to a foundation and ask for large sums of money. But again, maybe only one person believed that this was a good thing and he gave me a lot of money. I asked my friends, I sent out 700 letters. We sent out 700 letters. We got 400 responses, which was pretty good. And we raised more than $1 million from the general public. Some gave 1 month's salary, and they were secretaries. Some gave $20,000. They were only technicians. And I said, why do you want to give this? They said, because we believe that this is the right thing for our grandchildren. And once I knew that was and the media helped us, we reached out to the public through the media. We had adverse reaction, but from very few. We had very positive reaction. And that's when I knew I would why we were along the right track. And I always believe that if you're along the right track and you have the right reason for doing things, fate, God, luck will come in and help you to finish the job for you.
And speaking about faith and luck and even God, do you think that you have done enough and as a champion for for preservation and conservation? And do you think Singapore and Southeast Asia has done enough? And if not, what more can they do?
We never can do enough because we have only one pair of legs, one pair of hands, one brain, and 24 hours in a day. But you have to try your best. And I think I've tried my best because I've had 4 or 5 projects. And I always tell people, all you need is one, to champion one cause. If each Singaporean, each Southeast Asian citizen were to champion one cause, we would have solved all our problems. It is you do not want to champion every cause. So there's no such thing as, have you done enough? What is it that you have contributed towards getting a group of people together who believe to contribute to the same cause? And if you can do that, it will be like a multiplier effect. It's like I told people, I said, what happens when I do something in the Amazon forest? I said, when you do something in the Amazon forest, you actually affect somebody in Southeast Asia. And when I do something in Indonesia, I affect somebody in the Amazon forest. The world is interconnected. And I use the analogy to my students, of course, in the Singapore River, I said, imagine, you always tell me you got no impact. You drink a can of soft drink. When you finish it, you should be putting it into a dustbin for recycling. But instead, you throw it into the Singapore River, saying, what can one can do? It won't cause damage. What if 6 million Singaporeans all felt the same way about after drinking their can? Each individually says, what can my one can do? And I throw 6 million cans into the Singapore River. Think of that. This is the kind of multiplier effect and power individuals have to change the world. It is never about campaigns. I never started out to do campaigns. I always start out and saying, I have a dream. Is it worthwhile to pursue? Time will tell, but let's chase it and see. And it took me 40 years to return back from 1970 to this project at the end of my career to try and resurrect the 160-year-old Heritage Museum.
And if you had power right now, if you had given this amount of, supposedly if you are the Prime Minister of Singapore, if you are, or even the President of Singapore, and what would be the one thing that you would do to change?
I think I would ensure that my environmental education, I would tell my Minister of Education that environmental education is the most important, because we will continue, whatever our profession, we're going to live in the same single planet Earth, our mothership. And we've got only one. And unless you help to preserve and protect it, you will have no future. It's as simple as that.
Very wise, from a man who has accomplished a lot in 40 years. Before we go, what would be 3 key advice for aspiring leaders who wants to take steps to champion, green initiatives, preservations, and conservation of this planet, the way that you have done today, for more than 2 or 3 decades now?
Oh, several decades. But the key is you must be sincere about your cause. You do not champion it because it is a Cinderella topic, because it's topical, because it will draw media attention. You challenge because how come nobody's supporting something that is really important? And you pick your battles. You do not go around fighting every battle. For example, let's keep all of Singapore green. That's ridiculous. And some green groups go around raising that chant. I always tell people, you will never win any battle because nobody takes you seriously. In order to be taken seriously, you must get a few hard knocks. You try, you sound out what you articulate. First of all, you must be brave enough to articulate what you believe in and be prepared to get knocked about for it. And you come back again and you say, you want some more? Yes, sir, because I believe in it. And if you do it over and over again, ultimately, people will believe that you are sincere. So sincerity is very critical. And it's not about naivety. You must do your research about why. What are the pros and cons of doing something? What are the economic implications? You just can't say, this forest must be preserved at all costs because it's been there for 100,000 years. Hey, find out what is the value of a tree. Once I work out the economics of it, the person I'm addressing, the authority I'm addressing to, may pay attention, may read it, because he says, you have given me some ammunition in order to start a dialogue with you. But if you tell me, just preserve because I tell you it's good, then I got no way to go back to my voter and say, look, here's my justification why we should keep this instead of letting you develop it into a condominium. Right? And I think besides the sincerity, besides the rationalism, the third quality, I think, if you want to be an environmental leader, is that you got to be consistent, persistent, and stay steadfast to your belief. Because in the end, only with that will people come and support you. And you got to, in the face of adversity, you cannot do the double take. You cannot turn around and do the twist. This is something that people will never forgive you for. And that's why all my environmental causes, even though I'm attacked sometimes by my own green groups when I became chairman of NParks, they say, oh, now you're going to take the land of the government. Instead, you were once a greenie and now you're going to swing to... I said, no, I'm going to engage you even more. Because only when I have everybody in the dialogue, as what we are having our national conversation now in Singapore, I cannot claim to be speaking on behalf of the good of the country or of my cause, because I will always have tapped out one party who never agrees with me. And how do I know that I'm right and they are wrong? And that's why in all my jobs, I've been CEO of 2 organizations, I always try and pick a team where there's a naysayer in it. Why? This pinprick every day in your side keeps you awake, alert. You may all be walking down a slippery path and not realize it because everybody says, yes, boss, that's a wonderful thing to do. And actually, that is the worst thing to do. And so you stay alert by having diverse voice. And that is the reason why nature always has biodiversity. From vicious, predaceous animals to gentle creatures, because they all play a role in balancing the ecosystem to ensure the quality of the resources available.
Well, thank you so much,
Professor
Leo Tan Wee Lim, and for sharing with us your insights and your leadership, in spearheading the cause for preservation and conservation for a better green Singapore, actually.
And I think every country has got many people who share my sentiments. The projects may be different, the causes may be, the vehicle will, the context will be different, but the vehicle will always be the same. And if everybody does that in their respective countries, I think we'll have a better Southeast Asia.
Well, thank you for joining us, Professor.
Thank you so much.
And once again, here at the National Quiz Choice, thank you for joining.